What's up, bros? Welcome to the Men of Mind podcast. I'm Omar Bravo, and this is the podcast all about badass knack bros and their journeys through life. From the bad beats and the lessons learned to the mountaintop successes and advice they'd give their younger selves, this is your chance to get to know these bros better. In this episode, I talk with Ruben Dario Villa, Untitled Chapter Lambda class number 66 from Santa Clara University. Órale. There he is.
Hey.
What's happening, my man?
Nothing much. How you doing?
I'm doing fantastic, brother. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year's.
Thank you. Likewise, man. I wasn't too sure if I should expect facial hair from you, or I was like, what is he gonna have right now? You know, you got a nice clean shaven face right there.
I actually quit growing out the facial hair because it started coming in too gray, bro.
Oh yeah? You weren't embracing that?
Yeah, little
not yet.
Not.
Not yet.
It comes and goes, man. I mean, no joke. I earned every one of those gray hairs, so I'm not like embarrassed of them or anything.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't want to look too old for my kids either.
Yeah, no, I feel you. My kids haven't seen me. I've never met my face before, so
it's really funny because I've gone through it with my kids where I would shave and I'd come down and my babies will look at me and they'll be like, I know you, but something's different and it's really wigging me out, man. Like,
yeah. They're like, I mean, your eyes look the same, but who is this other?
Yeah,
the rest of the half of your face.
And I never had a big beard like you. It was just like a mustache or a goatee or a little something.
Yeah.
I'll shave it off and they'll be like, there's an imposter in here. He sounds the same, but I don't know.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah, so it's good. All right, bro. So to start off, I've kind of been asking folks the same question, and it's because since I haven't been in touch for a long time, or we haven't seen each other, or me and you, like we've never really lived in the same city at the same time. And so I kind of just start with the basics. So despite being on Facebook or Instagram and having an idea of what your story might be, I just rather just hear it from the source and not what's the word I'm looking for? Not assume anything.
Yeah, not just assume. Yeah.
Yeah. So first question is, so are you married with children or are you single and ready to mingle? Where are we at here?
Hey, I am definitely married and with children. I have my wife and I are about to celebrate 10 years in July. So 10 years of marriage. And another probably totally about 18 years together now. We've been dating since we were 16, so quite a long journey. Somehow some way we survived college and we made it out the other side, and now we have two beautiful children, my daughter Luna, who is 5, and my son Teocali, who is 4. And man, it's quite a journey. It's been quite a journey.
Good for you, man. That's fantastic. So did you guys both go to Santa Clara? Is that?
We did. We both went to Santa Clara.
Wow.
Not necessarily on purpose, but she was way more organized than I was as far as applications to college. And when she mentioned Santa Clara, and I was like, yeah, that's close by. That I've heard of that before, like I'll apply there, and I only applied to 3 schools. She had a whole mess of them. And, we ended up going to the same school, and, it was her dream school because she was going there regardless of where I was going. But I ended up going because I thought it was like a good, it had a good name that I recognized, and it was close enough. I live in Gilroy, so Santa Clara, is like 45 minutes away. So yeah, it was nice. Yeah, that's how I ended up at Santa Clara.
So Gilroy, that's hometown is Gilroy, both of you?
Yeah, she grew up in Sunnyvale, or at least that's what she claims. She claims Sunnyvale. I claim more of San Jose, South Bay. So I born and raised in San Jose until I was 12, and then transitioned to Gilroy. My dad was like, we're going to this small town down south, called Gilroy, and there's a lot of space down there. We got to go. And so we went, we made it happen. We did middle school out here, and then ended up commuting for 4 years to San Jose, to Midi. to my high school there in San
Wow, you were
Jose.
commuting from Gilroy.
Yeah, from Gilroy, back when 101 was still two lanes on either
Yeah,
side, and you know,
yeah.
and it was, yeah, it was a journey every day of high school to commute. You know, but I guess it got me good practice in terms of the hustle that it would take, the daily amount of hours that I had to put in to just be successful there and do all the extracurriculars that I did to prep me for Santa Clara. I think that was like a very good training zone for that.
What was it like growing up in so were you on the east side of San Jose or
Mhm.
and what was it like growing up there until you were 12?
Yeah, until I was 12. We were like east towards south. So we weren't like in the thick of like, you know, like Story and King, but
Mhm,
we where I grew up was a little more of like a Filipino Vietnamese
mhm,
area. So I grew up with my first crushes and best friends were all Filipino and
mhm,
Vietnamese, and you know, I really enjoyed the space because you know before I was born, my sister and you know my parents, um, you know they started renting and so they were you know they were renters at first, you know, like first a room and then a garage and then and then an apartment with my sister, and then right before I was born they were prepping to buy their first house. So I was very blessed to be born into that and have you know a space for myself. Unfortunately, after my brother was born 3 years later, I basically have shared a room my entire life, you
mhm,
know? So, but it, you know, we lived on a street that not a lot of people drove down unless they lived there, just the way that it was designed. So, you know, I did a lot of the typical stuff like playing football and freeze tag and like capture the flag and stuff out in the middle of the
mhm,
street. It was, you know, the local like PW market, like you know, like your typical kind of Safeway type of thing, was like down the street. So when I got old enough, I was sent, you know, to go get tortillas or whatever, you know, from the store. So there was a little bit of that kind of, you know, at least as much, um, at least you know, at least for back then, that was you know that was definitely, I think. And in San Jose it was a privilege, and it was I really enjoyed being able to do that kind of stuff without like fear of you know where I was or anything like that. And you know I just really enjoyed the mix of culture there too, because I would go over to my homie's house. He lived in the court right there off our street, and you know I remember walking in and everyone was treating me like family already. They're a big Filipino family. You know, always like, you know, they understood Spanish too. So that was cool that we connected and they helped me,
mhm.
you know, learn some basic, you know, phrases in Tagalog and, you know,
Yeah,
and so there was a little mixture of culture there. So, you know, I really enjoyed it. I was really blessed how I grew up, you know.
that's awesome. And so you said one sister, one brother.
Mhm.
Just three kids? All right.
Yeah, the three of us, my older sister, Yesenia, and my younger brother Orlando. My older sister, my parents did well, and my dad says he likes to claim the statistic that like 100% of his kids, you know, graduated from college. So he's
Nicely
very,
done.
you know, my mom and dad never had that opportunity, and so we were the first of our family to do that. And my sister is a therapist and now working with adults. Before she focused mostly on children, and then my brother just is a lawyer. So he just
Wow.
recently minted lawyer. And also, you know, he continued on. He got his JD MBA at Santa Clara
Wow.
after doing undergrad at Santa Clara. So he's the one. Him and my sister are definitely the ones with the most schooling. I've kept it. I've kept it to my you know my Santa Clara degree, and then just got into work and just learning a lot there on you know on the job. So that's kind of been my strategy.
That's wild. The JD MBA, that's super impressive. That's incredibly
Yeah, that
impressive.
was like it was a 3-year program, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So at the same time he's doing his JD, he's finishing up his his MBA, and then yeah, it was I don't know how he did it. Definitely he thanks us for the support, and I think also from not allowing him to hide, for too long without coming out of his room, and making sure he came out to family parties and led a balanced life as much as he could, because many times he said it was easy to just sort of stay where he was and just, close his blinds and just work,
Yeah.
so
That's basically
yeah.
what it takes to finish that in 3 years. That's
Yeah,
insane.
yeah, exactly. Uh-huh.
So when you guys moved when you were 12 to Gilroy, what was the reasoning behind moving?
I think it was mostly my dad's version of the American dream. I think having owned his own home, and my dad started a um um a menswear store. It's actually still in downtown San Jose. It's called Diaz Menswear.
Hmm.
Him and his cousin, my tío, opened it up. Back in the day, I think my sister was just born, and I was just on the way. And so him and his cousin were like, hey, they put 5 grand together, bought all the inventory of the old store that was there, and added their own twist. And then, almost 30 years later, it's still there. My uncle still owns it. And when he got out of that, he got into real estate, and he started to see and open
Your
his
your
eyes.
dad?
Yeah, my dad. Yeah. So he sold his part of the store and followed another mentor who had been guiding them to go into real estate. So he was like, I could do this. He's a uh, uh, generally liked and amicable guy. So he's like, I could sell this. I could sell homes. Like, this is not tough. So he got into it. For a while, he worked for like the big brands, like out here, like, the Remax, Century 21, like all the big names and stuff. And then he was like, I'm gonna open my own. He's gonna start his own real estate company. So he did, and I think in that time he kept seeing the opportunities of like what real estate could do, and he started considering that he could, with his line of work, as he continued to invest, make a good decision and go somewhere that was underdeveloped at the time. It's still kind of, in Gilroy's not a San Jose by any means, and even San Jose is not San Francisco by any means, right? But Gilroy is up and coming still even today. So he saw an opportunity and bought 2.5 acres in Gilroy. And
Wow.
we after 12, I was basically like a ranch hand. I tell him, we went to Gilroy, and my dad's dream is space. He loves space. He loves animals. And so we ended up with like goats, chickens, all kinds of different birds. And then he also, at one point, we had a couple cows and even a horse.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so we did a lot with that 2.5 acres. And we had dreams of grandeur for sure. In terms of, like, as a kid, you're like, I have all this space, all these
Hmm.
possibilities. I want a soccer field. I want this. I want
Hmm.
that. Like, and my dad let us dream out loud a lot, and that was really cool because my mom was the one that kind of goes directly to like what's feasible, what's
Hmm.
possible. And my dad was like,
He was the
yeah,
dreamer.
yeah, we could do that, and we could do this, and we could do that. And so, it was fun with that. And I think moving to Gilroy gave him the space, gave us all the space. We basically ended up throwing all the family parties for many years. Everyone would come over, even like my parents. I think was it 25-year wedding anniversary was there.
Hmm.
My sis, I think we even had a couple graduation parties, some quinceañeras. We had a bunch of stuff there because we had the space, right? And I think my dad liked being that because he's one of 10 children.
Nice.
And so, when you're dispersed like that, it's hard to see like where's the anchor. And my dad always liked to be that anchor of like people come to him and they know kind of like where home is. So I think that's why Gilroy in a nutshell.
Yeah. Where was your dad and your parents originally from? Were they from San Jose or?
No, my parents were both from Mexico, from Guadalajara, probably like an
Mhm.
hour out of
Okay.
there in Jalisco,
Hmm.
and they both landed in San Jose, and I think San Jose, Hayward, San Jose, like mostly San Jose, because a lot of folks from the town where he's from went to San Jose, and it was just more like, oh, that's where I'm going, kind
Right.
of thing. And yeah, I've been blessed to have a long history in San Jose. My parents met at a McDonald's working at a McDonald's in San Jose.
Nice.
They it was the McDonald's no longer there. Actually, it's a high rise. It's right next to San Jose State University.
Hmm.
There's like on Fourth and I think like San Fernando or something. The
Hmm.
McDonald's was there before, and they went to rival high school. My dad went to Lincoln High School. My mom to San Jose High, and they met working at McDonald's. And my dad was the night manager, and his side of the story is that he thought my mom was cute, so he like scheduled her to work closing with him all the time, so that they'd have more time to chat and stuff. So yeah, you know what I mean? Like whatever,
So
they
they came with their parents, right? Because they were still in high school.
yeah, so yeah, my grandfather from my dad's side, he was a bracero, so he
Hmm.
came working in the fields, and that's sort of how it worked out for my pops to
Yeah.
get that.
Back when Silicon Valley was really a
Yeah.
valley, it was
Yeah, it was
orchards and
actually a valley, or
yeah,
it was then known Valley of Heart's Delight
yeah,
at that point. Yeah, so that was his sort of way to get over here. And my mom's is a little more complicated, but yeah, my mom eventually when my grandmother came over, she brought the oldest daughter, or one of the
mhm,
oldest daughters, with her, my tia Lupe, and my mom essentially stayed and raised the rest of her siblings for a while they got set up over here, and then eventually my grandma went back and brought my mom, and so yeah, it was a bit of a more complicated journey for her, but I think in the end, they made it to San Jose, and I guess the rest is history. So
yeah. So technically, you're first generation born in the U.S.
yeah, I am. Yeah,
And was your older sister born in the? Oh, I guess so, because
yeah,
your
yeah, yeah.
parents were in
She
high
was.
school.
Yeah, we
Yeah,
were all the three of us were
yeah,
born here, and so at that point, luckily for us, we didn't have to worry about how we were going to get our citizenship or anything like that.
sure.
But as far as my family goes and my extended family, there's obviously, like, I'm surrounded by either first gen immigrants or first gen born in the U.S. So
Yeah,
that's been our history
yeah,
here.
absolutely. And so, do your parents still own that huge plot of land in Gilroy, or did they
So
cash
there's
in?
quite a bit of a twist and turn to that. We had in 2008 with the recession.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, my parents lost the home and lost the
Mm,
the, the plot of land. And so what happened was, at least at that point, luckily I was at Santa Clara already. So as
mm,
far as a living situation was going, I had a room there. I had a dorm room, obviously, and at that point it kicked into to the mode where I had to, apply. And I was always taking a job while I was at Santa Clara, so I was on work study. I did side hustle even then as a graphic designer. Like t-shirts, logos, all the works there. And then applied to more scholarships, did a Jesuit scholarship, stuff like that, because in '08 is when all that hit. We lost our house. My sister it was at the same time. She was doing her grad school. I believe she was then in Ohio, at Ohio State, doing
oh
she
wow.
was doing medical school there. She ended up not finishing that, but I think at that point she was already in that, going towards that. And my brother was still at home, so my brother had to go with my parents to like their first in many years going back to renting again.
Mm-hmm.
Finding a place for us. I think they ended up renting until last year. So they rented all the way in, still in Gilroy, couple of different spots, some homes, some duplex, that kind of stuff. And just last year, my parents were blessed to they bought 5 acres here in the wine country area of Gilroy. So they doubled, I guess, they doubled their land. But it took 10 years of recovery, of their working hard. My dad went into all kinds of businesses after '08, but most recently he's been pretty strong in as a general contractor in construction. So he's been doing that for quite some time now, and things went well. And my parents were like, we want to find that like forever place, and we want to get back to owning space again. So with some luck and some hard work, they made it happen. And
five
now,
acres out there is a big deal, man. That's no joke.
Yeah, yeah, it is. Especially where we're at, we feel like we're still in what feels like kind of like it's going down like 152, like as you start to head into start to go towards Watsonville, like Mount Madonna. So there's still like a feeling of like, okay, there's a little bit of privacy here, but there's still space, and we're close enough. We're right down the street from your regular town. And for the last year, they've been living full time out of a trailer. So my parents bought a trailer so that they could, in the meantime, they could enjoy their land while they prep building their home. Yeah. So
what a blast! That's a great story, man. That's wild.
Yeah.
So
it's quite a journey.
So you said in '08 you were still at Santa Clara. What year did you graduate?
I graduated in 2010. So,
damn, I thought for some reason I thought you were like right behind me, but I guess not. Time flies.
No, yeah, I graduated in 2010. Yeah.
And so, damn, yeah, that's was a wild time for sure. That '08 recession. That's tough, and it's always interesting to hear. I feel like all of the bros at some point during their time at Santa Clara their families were always going through crazy stuff, and if it wasn't hard enough to be a brown man or a person of color on Santa Clara campus, then you've got all this crazy stuff going on with, hey, my dad needs to borrow $40 or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's also really weird because you're living in the lap of luxury, like Santa Clara's Club Med, and you got your food, your meal card, and you don't ever worry about anything except So that's
at least for 10 weeks you can basically like enjoy yourself until comes time to pay the next quarter. So that was the real thing there, which is why I took jobs at Santa Clara, and luckily one of those jobs what got me like real tangible experience in design. I worked for the marketing department there, the main marketing department for Santa Clara. And my first assignment when I got there was to design the student ID cards. So
nice.
Yeah, so I got to design the new student ID cards. Last I checked, I don't think student IDs are a thing anymore. I think
they're doing it on their phone watch. They're on their watch.
Yeah. So I was like, no, it's gone. But it lasted at least 10 years, that ID card. So I was very stoked. I still have mine, obviously. And because that's what my wife said. She's a adjunct lecturer at Santa Clara now.
Okay.
And she told me about the new way students get into the building. So I'm like, whoa, that's dope.
Yeah, I heard Santa Clara was actually one of the first ones to implement the Apple Watch to access your dorm and
that's
whatnot. So it's really cool, really cool. So did you always want to be a graphic designer? Or when did the art thing start?
Yeah, the art thing started way back. I was a big fan of like Looney Tunes and just drawing, cartoons and what have you. And I was also just a big fan of like, I liked testing myself to see how well I could replicate something. So, I would put like an image of Taz next to me, and then I'll put my paper right here, and then I just start to draw it, see how good I could like transfer what that looked like into here. And I got a lot of practice with that. Eventually I started to like build up, like a perspective that I wanted to influence what I saw. So as opposed to just 100% replication, I started to add my own elements and try to create stories with that. And it was something that I obviously I had no idea that was like a career path, or like that was going to be the beginning of how I got to become a graphic designer. I didn't even know that was a thing. I went to Santa Clara as a sociology major, thinking that I was going to be a teacher. I was like, hey, I could be a teacher. I love teaching. I could be a teacher. Like, or at least I love socializing and working with the youth. So like, cool, I'll be a teacher. And of course, I was like, there's, you have your electives, and I was like, oh, I'll take art. I'll take this like basic graphic design class. That sounds cool, because when I was at MIDI, I was part of the student government, and at one point, one of the biggest events at MIDI is what they call Monarch Madness, and Monarch Madness is like where each class does like a series of posters. They do a whole like custom mix. They mix their own music, and they also choreograph their whole bunch of dances, and then they also compete in games against the other classes. And so all this is done in downtown San Jose, at like the Civic Auditorium in downtown San Jose there. So like we take over this like basketball stadium type of thing. Each class decorates. And so in being involved with that, and also like just running for office there as a student government, everything involved like designing your own poster or drawing your own set of stuff, right? And so that like I got really good, I feel like, at telling stories there with posters and just like, envisioning things at a large scale. And then eventually a friend of mine was like in the student government office, and he was like, clicking some things and moving things around. And I was like, what are you doing, man? And he was like, this is Photoshop. And I was like, Photoshop? What the hell's that? And he was like, oh, it's this thing that you can, it's a program that you can use to design stuff. And I was like, what are you designing? And he was like, oh, I'm building this website for this guy. And I'm like, he's a senior in high school. And I mean, he's one of the, he's still a homie, and he's one of the biggest hustlers I've ever met. But in high school, he already had a team of like engineers in Armenia, and he already had like, yeah. And he was like designing websites, and I was like, yo, so that was the first exposure to like digital art. And then when I got to Santa Clara, eventually I took that graphic design class, and I was hooked. Like I was like, yeah, this is how I can convert my art and digitally. And then I started to see like connect the dots with like, oh, okay, like people need this like as a service. Like I could do this for people. Like before, when I was at MIDI, I would do the drawings, and then I'd hand it over to the office, and then they would be like, okay, we're gonna go get this digitized, and we'll come back to you with the finished shirt or the finished whatever. And I'm like, damn, like, how were they able to take my drawing and make it like this? So I eventually found out how, and I ended up double majoring in studio art and sociology. And so I kept the sociology because it was very interesting to me, and I love just dynamics, how group dynamics and interactions like that come about. And I thought it was like the perfect pairing to my art and design, which essentially sociology and art comes together to be marketing. So I just kind of like eventually later on in my career realized that that's what marketing was. And I was like, oh, okay, dope. Like I'm still prepared for that,
that it's so great to hear that. It's such a wonderful story and the take, because I'm not sure if I teach at the college level now, and I teach digital marketing, and I teach Photoshop every single day, and I'm teaching web design and development. And so getting to hear your experience I see that same look in my students' eyes so often, where it's like, so many of my students walk into the class and they're like, "Hey, I played with Photoshop a couple times. Like, can I get a job doing this?" And
Yeah.
it's like, yeah, if we add this and this and this and this, and you get your psychology and your sociology, and you understand your marketing, and then
Hmm.
yeah, well, you can make yourself invaluable, and you can become a wonderful storyteller. And
Yeah.
so to
Great.
hear that you followed that same path, that's a blast. That's
Yeah.
so cool. That's so cool. One of the things I tell my students on a regular basis, though, is that because a lot of students walk in and they're like, "Hey, I just want to be not just, but I want to be a graphic designer,"
Yeah.
and it's like, yeah, it's probably not going to happen for you
Yeah.
because um, number one, people need more than just the graphics. So if
Yeah.
you want to be a graphic designer, you can't be like an okay graphic designer. You have to be the best. You have one of the best graphic designers, and then you can get on with a really large company like a Google or
Mhm.
like an Apple, and they'll
Yeah.
employ, single discipline graphic designers.
Yeah.
Whereas for small businesses, it's like a one man shop. I can't afford to pay a graphic designer and a marketer and a social media guy and a
Yeah.
web designer and a web developer, and I need somebody who can make my business cards and my website, right?
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
And so I always teach them, it's like, oh yeah, definitely Photoshop all day long, Illustrator all day long, but let's learn enough HTML and CSS and a little bit of JavaScript so that you can really cover all your bases. You can specialize where you want, but you got to become a jack of all trades. Otherwise
Yeah.
you're gonna limit yourself and pigeonhole yourself,
Yeah.
because not everybody gets to come out of Santa Clara with a degree, right? I teach at a
Yeah.
technical college. That's a whole different level, right?
Yeah. Definitely.
So
I think that's great that you sort of like promote that. Like, as I see um how Google value well my I always consider myself a jack of all trades. Like, just considering, like, I that was the education I feel like that the art department created at Santa Clara. It was, I mean, it's not a design school, it's not an art school. You don't go
mhm.
there. People don't look for Santa Clara for to become like a designer or an art major, right? Like, that's not the specialty that Santa Clara is known for. So I feel like I got a wide breadth of, like, just like a good foundation with design and art, and just like and just like, like a good foundation for that. And then I started to realize that, like, yes, graphic design was going to be my ticket to like a career, or like a ticket to making some money. But I realized that, like you said, my first job out of college was at a small marketing company in San Jose. It was a one woman show, and she just needed someone to do everything.
Mhm.
Right. So I did customer service, I did emailing, I did phone calls. I organized the receipts. There come tax season. I did everything. Obviously, I also designed stuff. Like her print material, her digital ads. That kind of stuff. Like, I did a little bit of everything. And what I realized was, like, yo, that's dope, because at that same time, she was also producing ornaments. So there were like Latino themed ornaments that, like, at that time was like, no one was doing that. Like, Latino themed anything was like not yet like the thing that it is today. Like, at the top of the charts was not reggaeton back in 2010, right? It's like, that's not, Latinos are hot and we're in right now, but that wasn't necessarily the case then. So I learned a lot of things from her small business that she ran outside of her marketing, and I saw what it took to do your own to make this work, when you have one person doing most of everything. And I realized that, like, okay, like, the things that I mostly care about is just continuing to tell the creative stories. So that's what I want to do. um, One of the things that I preach now is that graphic design, you can apply graphic design and the tenets of just strong design in general to
Mhm.
any sort of career path. Like, I ended up in product design and UX design. So although that's a different title, the same basic fundamentals apply to UX and UI design. And that's kind of how, I made a living for myself now being at Google for the last 6 years, is that like I just applied everything that I understood from graphic design. But instead of for print material, now I have a different sort of surface or different environment that I'm designing for. And then at a place like Google can now hone in and focus and be a specialist, because that's what Google cares about. They like specialists, right? As opposed to before, when I was at this small place, like you said, I needed to know everything. And I've been blessed to be able to do that and to be able to focus in a cool way that, that outside, I think, of Google, wouldn't be that fruitful necessarily, right? So that's, I enjoy that a lot. And that's why, as opposed to saying, I even say, because I feel like a lot of students that are first gen, they get kind of like this fear when they're like, oh, you also need to code, you also need to do this. Like, to get into tech, you need to code, you need to design, you need to do it all. You need a web design, all the things that you're saying, which is true to some extent. But I also said, hey, I didn't know at all how to code. Like, yeah, I did. I took the web design class or whatever at Santa Clara, or a couple, like 2 of them. But after that, I was like, this is not what I want. I'm gonna forget all that. Like, that's not what I care about. And so what I learned was that, now being in tech for like over 10 years, is that I don't necessarily do that on a daily basis, but it was important to have at least that understanding of it.
Yeah, that familiarity with it.
Exactly. So I think that's, what you're doing is spot on.
So before you ended up at Google and after you were at the marketing company, you did a stint at Apple, right?
I did. Yeah.
How long were you at Apple for?
I was at Apple for 4 years, a little over 4 years. What I did was, I love telling the story because it's like one of those moments for me where, I'm at this job, right? And no, I guess there is some shade, but I've gotten over it since. I'm at this job. I'm making, less than $10 an hour
at the marketing company,
at the marketing spot. And I'm a graduate of Santa Clara. And I'm thinking like, I graduated Santa Clara. I got this much debt and I'm making $8 an hour for this marketing spot, that I'm like, man, like I can't do this. Like, like part of it was upfront. I had to learn humility to just be like, okay, like I graduated into recession. Like, I'm blessed to have a job, so I'm doing that. I'm doing that now. I'm doing this job. At one point, I finally got a raise to $10 and I was like stoked, but I was still like, this is not what I should be making. I'm a Santa Clara grad. Like, I need to be making more than this. And then, during this time, I'm like, fine, I'll keep working here while I apply to other jobs. So I was doing a lot of time applying to jobs at that point, like Career Builder and Monster.com were like blowing up. That was like the new way to apply to jobs, So I was like, cool, at least now I can apply to more jobs with like a single cover letter and a single resume. And I can, just like adopt a couple different, things for each cover letter, make sure I have the right company name in there, whatever, right? Submit all that good stuff. And eventually I saw a thing that came up, and a little ad that came up for one of the jobs that I applied to said company in Cupertino looking for a Photoshop expert. And
it didn't even list Apple.
No, I didn't even. It just said company in Cupertino. I don't know why I didn't understand that was probably Apple, but it didn't click in my mind. At least at that point, I didn't know Cupertino meant Apple, Mountain View likely means Google. Like, there's different cities that you could kind of you kind of be like, oh, okay, I kind of know where this is going. But so this was a contract gig that I was applied to, but it was one of like almost 100 jobs I applied to. So I applied and just, on to the next one. And I wasn't even thinking. I said, I'm not a Photoshop expert at all. I wouldn't consider myself that. And I think, I'm okay at Photoshop, but, I was kind of in that space, like saying like, whatever, like I'm not an expert, but I'm going to apply anyways. Like, I don't like by the time they get back to me, if they ever do get back to me, I could learn Photoshop and the way that I need to learn it, and I'll be fine. Like, you know, I was good at Illustrator already, but Photoshop was like not my strongest, you know, sort of app at that time. And so, you know, I applied eventually, you know, maybe like a month or something goes by and I get hit up, but for this particular gig. And so they're like, okay, hey, here's a test. Or like I got the phone call first, right? I got the phone call that worked out. I said the right vocabulary words to get through that, you know, I used the right terminology, you know, like, as far as with the recruiter that I needed to, that I went on to, the design test. So the design test, came through, and what they wanted to do was that they sent me a 32 by 32 design file, or just basically just a PNG of the old iPhotos app icon, which was just like a little palm tree on an island with like the sunset background. So it was that icon, and it's like 32 by 32, and they said make it 4 times as big, and you know, add whatever detail you need to add, you know. And so I was like, okay, all right. So I was like, at that point, you know, vector graphics was like just coming up, like as far as like everything was raster based. So like vector graphics, at least in Photoshop land, was not like a thing that people cared about. So, but I was like, I know I just can't just scale this to 4x and then I'm
get 128 by 20.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, oh, I just changed the number right here and then it's good to go, right? And it's like, no, that
you had to redraw everything.
No, exactly. So how am I gonna approach this? So I actually hit up my old design professor at Santa Clara, and I was like, hey, Marco, like, you know, what do you think I should do here? Like, he was like, all right, well, you know, make sure if they want. I explained to him the prompt. He was like, okay, just use all the vector tools. You know what those are? Just use those because they probably want to see it
clean,
scalable. And so just try that. So I did that. You know, I basically put it as my background. I traced it all, did it all, you know, played around with the gradients, did everything that I could, figure all the tricks that I knew at that time to make this work. Right. And I also really organized my file because I knew that they would probably care how organized it was. So I also organized my file really well. I checked in one more time with him. He said, okay, this looks good. And I was, you know, I refined it like a couple more times. And I was like, I think I'm ready to go. I submitted it, and they were like, hey, cool. They were like, you actually did a really good job. Like, how did you do this? I was like, I mean, I just did what I knew to do. Like, you know, I don't know. Like, what were other people doing? Like,
you told them I'm a Photoshop expert.
Yeah, exactly. And so eventually I got in, right, to the in-person interview. And this is like, you know, I have never been in a corporate environment. My parents didn't come from corporate environments. So I completely dressed up. I did the whole thing that I see in the movies that you do when you go to a job interview. Like, that wasn't necessarily the culture at Apple, nor definitely not at Google. But I dressed up and I went in, you know, and I even had a printed portfolio with me. I had my big book, you know, and I had all the stuff that I needed because I knew they wanted me to talk through my portfolio. And then I was going to have to talk to my test. They were going to put it on the screen. I had to talk through my test. And so I did that. And one of the things that I added to the palm tree, I figured, okay, at 4x the size, they want more details, they said. So I'm going to add coconuts to the palm tree, because why wouldn't you add coconuts to the palm tree? I think it's a cool little addition. If I'm going to be drawing it bigger, I would want more details like the coconuts. And then the lady was, you know, the hiring manager, actually still one of my mentors. She was like, so tell me about the coconuts there. And I was like, well, you know, I just thought like, you know, it would add some character to the palm tree. And at that point, I wasn't even an Apple user. I was still Android. So I didn't even know what I was designing. I didn't know that was the app icon for iPhotos at the time.
You just thought it was an icon.
I thought it was just like a little image. Okay, cool, I'll do that. But obviously, I'm telling them about these coconuts, and they're probably thinking like, what is this guy doing? Adding stuff to like an app icon like that, that like, this is Apple. What are you doing? Like, you don't do that. At least I didn't know that I wasn't supposed to be doing that, or, I was crazy enough to, and, oblivious enough to go and submit it. And she was like, okay, cool. Thank you. Like that, I let her know. Eventually when I got the job, she told me, she was like, hey, like that day after having interviewed at least 50 people, 50 to 60 candidates, like the only one I could remember was yours. And it was because the coconuts.
Wow.
She was like, coconuts got you a job at Apple. I was like, besides obviously being really good and organized, like the coconuts, I couldn't forget about those coconuts. So
but 50 people, that's a lot, man.
Yeah.
Especially when it comes to the design community, like Apple's in so many ways the pinnacle of where you go. So I guess my first question is, what besides money made you leave?
Apple?
Yeah.
I think eventually, well, one, I didn't know what I didn't know. So had I known
what you know now,
what I know now, I might have even left earlier. But I thought that I got to Apple and as a contractor. So, I also have a different experience than like someone coming in directly full time. We were in charge of designing. There was 12 of us in a room literally without windows, just our stations apart. And we were in charge of redesigning, over 16,000 assets so that all of Apple's assets could scale to the new Retina displays that were about to come out, to like the iPad, the
so you were literally a digital factory worker. You were a pixel pusher.
Yeah, we were like, okay, here's all the assets that make up GarageBand. Now make sure that they're 4x. And that, we took it a step further. We said, we're going to make everything 100% vector. So the day when it comes that you needed 16x, it's already ready to go.
Right.
So that's what we did for a good year and a half.
Yeah, you were working on a digital assembly line.
That's what it was. Yeah. And I was so blessed because even though I knew Photoshop, like, some basics, I didn't know it to the degree that of the folks that I was sitting next to. Or at least that I thought, right? Everyone fakes it to some degree. And I was definitely there faking it to make it. And I was just like, oh, so how would you go about like doing this? And they were like, oh, you could just do this and that. And in that time, we all fed off each other, teaching each other different tricks. We also got like the godfather of Photoshop works at Apple. People know him as Floyd. And so he came and like taught us like all the tricks that he knew too. So we did become Photoshop experts at that point. And Apple was all Photoshops. And I don't know if they're still like that. I don't think they are, but they were hardcore Photoshop at that point. And so we did all that for about a year and a half. I eventually made a network. I stayed connected with my hiring manager.
Did you ever become a full-time employee, or were you just contractor?
Yes. So about a year and a half, I was a contractor, and then I transitioned into full-time. So I made a great network. I stayed connected with the folks. Our lead for that project, for that contract, became the first to become full-time. And then staying from there, like little by little, like as the project was winding down, like a chunk of 4 left and went and got hired at somewhere else. Another 4 sort of got let go. They were like, okay, cool, but we were not going to hire you. And then a few of us stayed on the project to like the very, very end. And that was one of me. And at that point, we were like moved locations right next to like the official team. And so I use that to my advantage, making sure that I talk with folks, like, like I wasn't just going to sit in my corner like I did before, where all I knew was, and working in the dark and just kind of like going at it. I was like, I'm going to do what I do best, just connect with people, And so I did that. And yeah, I got full time, and I did that for
another 2.5 years.
Another 2.5 years to complete out my little over 4. And what I thought that I was doing at Apple, well, I thought that was just how every company did it. And by that, I mean, like, they're very hardcore on the privacy and the secrecy of their work, and like, you know, everything is need to know. Even on this, you're on the same team sitting next to someone else. If you don't need to know what they're working on, you don't need, doesn't matter what's on their screen. You know, like, if they're not specifically working on the project, like, there was so much red tape to just get through so that you can, like, do your job. And me being, I didn't understand why it was such a, like, a wall. I kept hitting a wall because I'm a big picture person. I need to know what I'm working towards so that my part could be perfect, to be great. Right. I can't produce something great for you if I don't know what are the principles that are guiding me here. What's the big picture? How does my little piece fit into the big puzzle, right? Like, and that's why I didn't realize that I was constantly fighting an uphill battle with like the secrecy culture there, that I was getting drained. I, you know, 2 years of doing that, you know, I just got drained. And especially my manager at that time was like, he was a prodigy at Apple, and he drank the Kool-Aid before he was even at Apple. And so he like expected us to just, you know, do his whim. There was no, fall in line. There was no, like, oh, I have this idea. Okay, that's cool. Go do what I told you to do. And I was like, okay, well, I guess this is how it's done. And I didn't know that. I didn't know that that's not the case everywhere else. And so eventually I just had to quit. I wasn't, you know, I said, as much as my immigrant parents freaked out, and you know,
I know that story.
They're like, you're gonna work there for 30 years and then you're gonna retire. Like, that's your journey. And that wasn't for me. And
so that just raised a whole bunch more questions. So first off, were you already lined up at Google when you quit Apple? So you just literally you quit Apple.
Yeah, I just quit.
So I did the exact same. How old were you?
How old was I at that point?
26.
I was 24. No, I was 23.
No, you worked at Apple for 4 years after college. Graduated at 22.
Oh, this is true. Yeah, because I was already married. I got married at 24, and I worked 2 more years, so I was 26. Yeah, there you go.
So 26. So I quit corporate at 28, and I had the same conversation with my parents, where they told me, they're like, I just don't understand why we worked so hard to put you through college, to do this, to do that, and then you get a great job and make a ton of money, and then you just want to throw it all away.
Yeah, exactly.
I had the same conversation, and it's like, well, you obviously don't understand. You don't see my vision. You don't. It's like, but I'm 28 years old. I'm a grown ass man. I got to make my own decisions.
Let me go do this.
I fully heard that this is not what you would do, and I understand that. But you fought for these opportunities so that I could do,
so that I could make these, so that I could
do this.
You know, yeah.
So you said that, I was like, oh God, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, it was a reality. Even every step of the way, it was my parents learning something as I was learning something. When I was at Santa Clara as an art major, they were like, my dad especially was like, I remember the phone call. He was like, what are you going to do with the art major? And he was like, Santa Clara is expensive. And, you know, like, you know, this was after losing their home. So I'm sure they're going through their own, like, what just happened to my American dream? Like, we're here now. Like, what is going on? Now my son and my daughter are going to college at the same time. My sister had continued into after USF, you know, and my brother was about, you know, leaving. He was about to leave, also, you know, private high school. So they're paying for a lot. And they were like freaking out that I'm an art major, you know, and I'm like, don't worry, Dad, like, I'll figure it out. Trust me. Like, I got some clients already. Like, I'm designing some business cards. Like, I know it's just the beginning, but I'll show you how art can become a career. And then when I got the job at Apple, they're like, oh, okay, I get it now. Right. And then I quit. And then they're like, wait, whoa. I thought you just said that was it. And I was like, well, it was it up until it's not, you know? It
That's
is
right.
until it's not. And,
Well, even so,
you know,
4 years in Silicon Valley and 4 years in tech is a long time, right?
yeah,
Everybody, it's like 18 months in and out. And so
yeah,
you were at Apple for 4 and now you've been at Google for 6. Like
yeah.
you're the old guy, right?
Yeah, I am. I'm definitely OG at Google for sure. Yeah, I'm just like, oh, I've been here for 6 years. Like, oh, damn, you know. I mean, but I also know folks that have been at Google for 15 years. So, you
Yeah.
know, I still, at least there's still some of those folks around that I'm like, okay, you know, it's not that bad. But you know, you know, yeah, I quit into nothing, I just knew that I needed to quit, and what I was gonna do was just figure it out along the way, and that's when
Yeah.
I started Fuchila. You know, so
Is that
I
right? That was
yeah,
the
so I quit Apple and I started my air freshener empire. You know,
right.
so
So I want to get to Fuchila, but with regards to quitting, it's
yeah,
really interesting because I'm such a proponent of quitting.
yeah,
I'm always encouraging people to quit. It's like, hey, you don't like it, quit.
yeah,
Go do something else. Go figure something else. Go back to school. Go do this. Go do whatever. But don't just sit there and be like, 30 years ain't that long. Like,
yeah, exactly. I think I could hold on for 30 years. You know,
and
like no
so
way.
there's so many friends, family, and bros too. I've had, a number of bros call me up and say, hey man, I need some advice. And it's like, what's going on? They're like, oh, I just got laid off. I'm like, congratulations, man.
Hell
And
yeah, bro.
I was like, good for you. And they're like, what are you talking about? I was like, here's the deal. Whatever you do, don't run out and get another job. Like that's the
Yeah.
worst. Like not right away. What you need to do is, because when you get another job, you're probably not going to have very much vacation time, and
Hmm.
it's not a good look to take a bunch of vacation when you start a new job,
Yeah,
anyways.
of
So the
course.
first thing you want to do is go on vacation.
Hell
If you
yeah.
if you don't have any money, that's okay, because you're going to get another job and you're going to get a way better job than you had. So go ahead
Yeah,
and pull out the credit card right now and put the vacation on the credit card and go take some time, rehab, relax. Like you got to take some time off.
I love that.
And so most bros are like, dude, my parents are gonna kill me, or you're crazy, or something
Yeah,
like that.
yeah.
And then like a couple weeks later, they're sending me pictures from Europe or something. It's
Yeah.
like it's
Hell
like that's
yeah.
what I'm talking about. Yeah, good. And then they always
Mhm.
come back and land on their feet, because what else are you gonna do? You
Yeah.
got to get a job sooner or later. Like that credit
Yeah.
card bill's not gonna pay itself. But
Hmm.
so
No,
that's
that's
awesome.
beautiful. I love that being proponent of quitting. I think it is very
Yeah.
much about embracing that, because I mean, at that point, my wife and I were, you know, we're a young couple, you know, um,
You
she's a
didn't have any
teacher.
kids, right?
Yeah, we had no kids yet,
Yeah.
you know, but we were like, I think it's time. Like we're considering like having kids soon. Um, right. And so you know, we're kind of like, um, how do we do this if we both leave really early in the morning and we both come back really late? Like, how is this really gonna work, you know? And especially being in a job where I was drained, you know,
Mhm.
it was affecting
It wasn't
us.
it wasn't energizing you, man.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, why would I keep doing this? Imagine I had stayed there any longer, you know, like who knows what would have happened between us, like, you know,
My
my wife
my
and I.
Yeah, my wife has a rule for me. I'm not allowed to not like my job. I have to
Yeah,
I can't just like kind of like my job or mostly like my job. I have to fucking love my job.
yeah,
Like love, love, love. Because if I don't love my job, I come home and it's like I'm drained.
like,
There's nothing left.
yeah,
You get the leftovers. Like,
yeah,
no, I have to love my job. And my wife will tell you right now. She's like, if you don't love your job, no problem. Quit and
yeah.
go get a different job. And I don't care if we have to take a pay cut, if we have to get a smaller house, if we got to do, but you are not allowed to not love your job.
I love that. That's such a
Yeah. And
big
so,
part to have.
we have that rule in it, and it works wonderfully, man. And so I see people who don't love their job, and it's
Hmm.
like, and I think that when you're in it, you don't see how much the negative effects are,
Mm.
as
Yep.
opposed to, and then you quit and then everybody's like, oh my god, you're so much more happy, or
Yeah.
you're so much more
Yeah.
energized, or like,
Yeah.
oh yeah.
No,
so
I feel
so
you.
yeah, you got to love your job, and if not, go do something else, go find something
Hmm.
else,
Yeah. Yeah.
regardless.
No, I love
I
it.
feel like a big a big something that's really important to me is just having that go to hell fund at all times.
Yeah.
Like, hey, I'm not going to buy a new car, or I'm not going to do this, or I'm not going to do that, because I want to have that healthy go to hell fund where it's like every day that I go to work, and I tell my coworkers this on regularly. It's like I don't have to be here. I chose to come here this morning. If I didn't want to come here this morning, I don't have to come. I could quit. I could take a year off. I could take 2 years off, and I'd be fine.
Yeah.
But I chose to come here. So, that's a whole different story than I can't quit. No, I can quit. I can quit. Yeah. And exactly. And you walk around with a different attitude. Mm-hmm. It's like, I'm willing to take risks. I'm willing to tell people what I think or whatnot. And it's like, if they fire me, I guess they fire me, right? I'll be fine. I'll go no problem. I'll go on vacation.
Exactly. And that's part of the privilege I feel like that we're afforded, that our parents were not. They didn't have that option. They were like, I make very little as it is, or like, I'm in this situation where I need to work that job, and if there was no go to hell fund for them, it was like, that's it's just purely survival. And then you get to a point like us where they work their ass off to make sure that, we have that opportunity to have that and to be able to walk around like that. And
so if we don't take advantage of that opportunity, it's like, well, then what would they work so hard for?
The point,
if we just behave ourselves the same way they behave themselves, if we're still tap dancing and just grinding it out, it's like, then what was the use of working so hard for? Now I have bigger bills. I have more debt. Like, that doesn't make any sense. It's like, you busted your ass so I could have more opportunities, and now I'm exercising those options.
Yeah, you busted your ass so I could quit Apple. So just let me quit.
I quit Texas Instruments, man. I quit IBM.
Yeah. And you were one of those roles that had a gig early on, right? Was this even before graduating? You had a gig?
Yeah, no? I got a job at IBM when I was basically right when I crossed NAC. Like 2 weeks later, I got a job. I started my first co-op at IBM.
Damn,
so I had just finished my freshman year,
and you were already like,
so I worked.
I'm sure at that point you were rolling in it as a freshman.
I think they started me. This was 1998, and I think they started me at like $14 an hour, and then after by the time I was a senior, I was at like $25 an hour. Because I just worked straight through. I'd work full time in the summers and then part time through the school year. Yeah. And so that was a long time ago, right? I mean,
but it was great. Now in and out's like $20 an hour.
Yeah, right.
So there you go.
Yeah.
Or at least here in California it is. I don't know other places. Yeah.
That's right, man. It's a different time for sure.
Yeah.
So let's talk about Fuchila. You had, how long did you end up, what was the break between Apple and Google? How many, what was it, the 6 months?
It was more like 3 to 4 months.
Okay.
Yeah. So it was,
and in that time you threw up the Kickstarter.
Yeah. I also saw Kickstarter was also blowing up, as far as like, that's how people start up cool ideas, they go through Kickstarter, they do, crowdfunding. So, and there weren't many other options. I think at that time it was just Kickstarter. That was like the first one out the gate. So I went with that, and I said, okay, what I'm going to do is, I have had this idea for a while. I thought I was just kind of searching for a name. I was like, I want to do some cool fresheners. I'm just looking for, kind of considering a name. And then I was just like, Fuchila Freshners. And I was like, that's it. Like, there was no other option after that. Like, once I hit Fuchila, I was like, this is it. Like, this is everything that I want. I love alliterations. I love like the cultural nuance it has, like the nostalgia that hits with it as well. Like, this is perfect. So, I went with that. And at first I was just like, my first reactions were like, okay, I definitely know I want to do like a Frida Kahlo, a Selena, and a Pancho Villa. And I was like, what else can I do? I was like, what other ones can I do? And I just considered, I like Cantinflas. So I'll go with Cantinflas because that also hits more of my parents' generation or a little bit older generation. Because Cantinflas, although I love Cantinflas, I know that not many folks even my age or before or younger than me know about Cantinflas. You kind of have to just grow up in the culture and know about them. And then I was like, and he's very like cross Pan Latin American too. He's not just Mexican. Like he was a big star across all of Latin America and even in the US. So I was like, okay, cool. That's another figure to do. And then I thought of like, oh, I've always loved wrestling. Let's do like a Blue Demon. I think that'll be perfect. That's also another niche that's like very important. I think the wrestling world is very much like that underground still, or at least it was more, at least in that point. So I thought that. And then I also, considered, the Calavera, a sugar skull, which is, that was an easy one. I called that very white friendly as well. So I was like, that's an easy one to do, to like kind of put all together. Right. So I was like, yeah, I'll go with these 6. I can design my logo. I looked at other Kickstarters that I saw. I kind of figured out what their formula was. And I was like, okay, cool. I'll do a little image like this, some images here. I'll fake. Everything was fake. The products were fake. Everything was non-existent, right? But the idea was everything I believed in. And I guess I just needed to know if this was as cool as I thought it was, know. And that's what Kickstarter provided. It's like a no risk besides what the time
just
that you put into
grease,
it. Yeah, exactly. So you do it and you figure it out. And my goal was 2,500 and we raised 3,500 in that month time or I can't remember even the amount of time anymore. But I did that and, I started the Instagram at the same time. So I was like, okay, cool. This is definitely working. I see things picking up speed. And, by Christmas Day that year, that was October. And by Christmas Day, my wife and I were like hand delivering Fuchila, like real product, across San Jose, like, cause we had promised our backers that by Christmas Day, they would have their fresheners in hand. And so although we missed it by a day or two for our non-local folks, like Vero and I drove around San Jose, like delivering fresheners to people's doorsteps.
And so let's take a step back. How, when you came up with this idea, was it any bigger than, hey, I just want to make some fresheners? Or was it, hey, I think that I could make this a real business and that this is gonna be a career move? Or is this no? It was just hey, this is just a passion project. This is just something I want to do.
Yeah, I was like,
just for fun.
I could. Yeah, I want to do it for. I've always been. I feel like and especially since Fuchila, I've always been like, oh, how can I monetize this? Like it's just like a. I don't know why. I can't help myself. Sometimes I have to like, okay, relax. Like we don't have to make everything into a business, but but that's how it was. I feel like that was part of my upbringing. Like, my dad would drive me around the neighborhood where I grew up that we talked about. And I would, he'd drive me around with the lawnmower in the back and I'd go and knock on doors and say, hey, can I mow your lawn? And they'd be like, yeah. And he was like, you got to go negotiate. What do you want to get paid? Go negotiate it. And then, and then I would do the whole thing. So it was like, okay, cool. And then eventually you got, my other thing was, going to parties, my family parties and collecting the glass and the plastic bottles,
recycling,
and the cans and stuff. So I could go sell that recycling money, and have money that way. And, another hustle I had was after I realized that like I was spending way too much money on Pokemon cards but Pokemon was still like a dope thing. I just realized, I just snapped out of it. Like, I think sooner than a lot of people. And I was like, I want to sell this stuff. So my brother and I started selling Pokemon cards to the rest of the kids. So I've always had that inclination, I feel like, to like, how can I
that hustle?
Yeah. How could I just do this? Right. So I knew air fresheners was a thing that everyone had. I went to all the car shows. Everyone had the little trees. I knew if I could produce a cooler option, people wouldn't have to hide it under their seats, at car shows. Like they would be able to put it on the rear view mirror with pride. That was part of my little blurb, my brand blurb, is that you can show it off with pride. And it's something that represents your culture. So it's not just a little tree that you can care less about. It's something that represents you, or it's specific to you and your culture. and a lot of people early on was like, cool, now you can make like Chinese air fresheners, and you can make like Filipino fresheners, and you can make like, like all these other cultures. I'm like, like I knew that it's what I didn't want to do was create an air freshener empire. That's why I joked that I wanted to, rule the world an air freshener at a time. But it's like, it's not like I just cared about
it was FUBU, man.
It was just for me. And if you weren't about it, then someone else could go make Filipino air fresheners or whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like, it definitely is, because it's like, well, I could do that, but I'd rather not go appropriate their culture and make their dime. I'd rather let them do it.
Yeah, exactly.
But what probably happens is some old white dude is going to do it.
Yeah, exactly. So a white guy would do it. And that's cool. Like if he wants to, make a living selling air fresheners as Little Tree has, they got their, they're the main players. Like I wasn't trying to replicate that. What I was trying to do was just take a break from that culture of just like work.
Yeah, it was definitely
every moment of
the creative outlet.
Every moment of Fuchila was just creative time. I was just having fun again, with my design. I was laughing at all my Instagram posts. I was like having a blast, just like, just working working for myself and making all the creative decisions for myself and just enjoying that time. So, you mentioned like how long was that? That was, 3 or 4 months of that. And I remember, soon after my wife was like, yeah, remember how we were going to try to start a family? Like we need a real income from you.
That's right.
Like, yeah, you're right.
A real income with real insurance.
Yeah, with real insurance. Luckily, as a teacher though, like we played it off. Played it right. We're like, she had great insurance. Even when I was at Apple as a contractor, I didn't need to pay for insurance. We had it through her. And then I got full-time, and then we had double at that point, because it worked out really great to have it for me as well. And then when I quit Apple, cool, transfer over to her, So in many cases, we were just, hedging our bets. Like, okay, like as long as we got like basic, like insurance and we could cover, and we have some savings and we can cover like, our living expenses for some time, like do it. But as far as this being long-term, how about we build it as a side hustle? So I was like, okay, let's do that. I'll just keep having fun. It was never a thought that I would eventually quit corporate to work full-time, slanging air fresheners. It was more of like, I just need this project as a refreshing, as a survival mechanism, even,
And so I got a bunch of questions. From the business perspective on Fuchila, do you think that you could have or still could turn that into a full-time gig that could support your family?
I could say with, I guess with some hindsight that yes, like I could have probably and mostly past tense because we'll get to it, but I could have probably went back and said, you know what, there were some points in the journey with Fuchila that if I had really, really wanted to, I probably could have pulled the trigger on some things to make it a reality. Like I already had told before, 2019 was actually the year that I had to, in 2016, I had told Vero, I was like, yo, like, I'm giving you a 3-year notice I'm giving you a 3-year notice. In 3 years, I'm going to quit corporate. Okay. And we're going to figure out what it is that I do, but I just know that I want to do something. And, 2017, hey babe, 2 more years, I'm going to quit corporate. Okay. And I'm already at Google at this point. And okay, babe, 1 more year. And then hit 2019. At the end of 2019, I'm like, all right, so in 2020, I'm about to quit corporate. We'll figure something out. Then the pandemic hit. And I was like, holy shit, I'm so happy I'm in corporate right now. Because at that point, we were even scheming like we were legit. We were in it. We were scheming, okay. Yeah, we were looking at like office space because I wanted to create like a creative co-working space.
God, that would have bankrupted you.
Yeah, exactly. I wanted to create a co-working space for my creative homies and I. We also, like do the similar that was popping up at that time, like co-working, rent a desk, come work, creative, except for corporate. I wanted to make it like on the creative spectrum, on the creative side of things. And you know,
Sounds like you want to start a design agency.
Yeah, and I was also like, as I bring creatives in, I'm like, ooh, okay, now that I have creatives sitting next to me, you know, use that as a in to start, you know, a creative agency. And that was already part of the map, you know, the that I was sort of drawing out at that time. And then pandemic hit, and I was like, holy shit, like I was about to rent office space. I was about to go down this thing, and we were even looking at getting a space for Vero, because Vero was looking at you know, she still has Nene Bilingue, which is she's a bilingual specialist, and so she wants to create like wanted to create a language lab for children or for parents to have a support space for their kids to learn Spanish and English, you know, for bilingual education as they grow. And, you know, she did a bunch of like, you know, interview meetings, interviewed other similar businesses, one in, I think, New Mexico, one in LA. She was like, we were doing our homework for everything. We were setting ourselves up to just, bam, like we're doing this. And then it hit. And I think for the most part, you know, I didn't pull the trigger in other cases because it wasn't meant to, because I think I was meant to take the route that I was meant to take. And you know, I was very fortunate. There was, you know, if I think the only thing that I didn't like about building Fuchila that I knew I probably needed to do to grow it was that I needed to spend more money. And I was like, so this is really like companies, agencies will hit me up. They're like, hey, you give us $5,000 and we can connect you. We can give you all the meetings you need at like Target, at this and that, this and that. And I was like, is that really what it's going to take? Like, I'm just going to like give you a check and then you're just going to get me all the meetings. Like, man, I guess partly, if I was being real, could be like fear of losing that $5,000. But another fear was like, it was like pride. Like, I don't want to pay money to make these meetings. I want to like do it on my own merit. Like I want to I want somebody to see this. I feel like I did something for this. And so I guess maybe part of it was pride, part of it was fear, but I just think it just wasn't meant to be. And I don't think I ever considered, I really enjoyed the moments that I felt like it blew up in the pop culture. We got really lucky on a few occasions. We've been on Netflix a couple of times. We were on Stars. We were on Vida, on the show Vida, on Stars. We were on Gentified on Netflix. When were you on Gentified? Yeah, I just finished watching the second season. I just finished watching it. Yeah. So season 2, the grandpa is like in his Salma Hayek in his truck or whatever, and there's a little freshener on his thing. He like picks it off the freshener, he smells it, he's like and he throws it in his glove compartment. That's our that was on season 2. Yeah, I think season 2 or what? How many seasons did it go? 3?
Just the 2. They're just finished season 2.
That was okay. Well, then it must have been the first season. Then.
Yeah, I think it was the first season.
Yeah, so he's in the truck. You know, he smells the air freshener. It's after he gets a truck back, I think, from...
Yeah. So that's one of the like third episode or fourth episode.
So that's kind of...
and which freshener did he have?
It was the little Ninja Turtle, our little Ninja Turtle paleta. Yeah. So, it's actually funny because when I started Fuchila, a homie, this lady hit me up. She's like, hey, you know, I really dig what you're doing with Fuchila. I want to connect you with these other creators. I think we should do something together. Let's do something. And, you know, for better or worse, nothing really panned out. But this person was Patty Rodriguez, and she started Little Libros. I don't know if you heard of Little Libros before, but she's doing she's doing huge things. She used to be a producer or maybe she still is, for Ryan Seacrest. So she was a producer for his show. And so obviously had tons of connections there. She was in the creative scene in LA. So it was like, okay, I want you to connect you with these creatives. And Marvin Lemus, who's the writer and director for Hentified, was one of the guys. And we were connecting for a while, trying to figure out how to do something together. It didn't really pan out. And I think he was like, I'll let's do anything. Like, you don't have to pay me. Me and you will just work on something. And then eventually, I think for him, it was like the reality of bills came into play. And the same with me. I ended up at Google. He ended up taking some gigs. And then, his movie, he made he made a documentary with America Ferrera. And then after that, they started Hentified. And so when I saw that, I was like, yo, remember me? I was like, I've been watching your journey, bro. You used to be like, I got nothing else but my hustle to give you. And now you're coming up, bro. That's beautiful. I was like, let me send you some swag. Let me send you some fresheners.
Nice.
And he was like, cool. I'll figure out how to put it in the show.
Very cool.
So, it was very much like a full circle.
Where you said you were on Netflix a couple times. Where else was it on Netflix?
The other one was on so if you've seen the Walter Mercado documentary.
Oh yeah.
So there's a part in the documentary where they show that like restaurant with like Walter Mercado themed bathroom, and they make like Walter Mercado everything. And so in one of the scenes where they're showing the toilets, the bathroom, hanging from where you flush the toilet is our Walter Mercado air freshener.
There you go.
In that scene. So yeah, you can check us out there as well. And then Vida, the show Vida on Stars, as well was a big one too, because that was a bigger scene. It felt like it was like a quinceañera scene where like the two characters, like the fresheners were supposed to be like the recuerdos or the goodies for the quinceañera, and like the main characters like like playing with this glass bowl full of like Fuchila, and she's like, oh, I love these, that are like, she's having a trip, she's on drugs or something. And so it's part of the story, but I just thought really cool, because at one point she drops the bowl and all these fresheners fall across, and the camera follows it and you can see all my fresheners across the floor. So it's really dope.
That's a blast, man. Yeah. Okay, I got some other questions about Fuchila, because so Fuchila opened some really cool doors for your passion projects. I don't know, so I'm guessing it hasn't made you independently wealthy yet.
No,
it's profitable, yeah.
Everything. So everything that I've gained from Fuchila, more so beyond the money, has been the network, building my network. It's crazy, the network that has been built around Fuchila, or that Fuchila has provided, or that Fuchila has allowed for me to have. Like I have so many more of those kinds of stories.
Well, yeah. So I follow on Instagram, and so I remember this just came to mind a long time ago. Wasn't it George Lopez that hit you up?
Yeah. So a lot of the folks that I ended up doing work with was me just like either like, okay, I found like, it was like, how could I get a hold of these people? Like, I know if they saw the product that I have, they'd be down to work with me. I just need to get a hold of them. So George Lopez is one of those that like I knew that I could probably get a hold of in a few different ways. One of the ways was when I joined, when I was at Google. I was a contractor. So after 4 months of not working on Fuchila, I hit up a manager that I had known, to a small degree, but I had known a little bit at Apple. And he was like, hey, you know what? What we just did at Apple, like I'm gonna go do that at Google. Like if you like, it was just called the production design. So basically like the implementation of everything that you've done, now it's just making that happen. And he was like, I'm gonna go do that at Google. So if you ever want a gig, let me know. And of course, I did hit him up, and I didn't even have to interview. He was like, cool, meet the team, cool, you're on. So
nice.
That's how beautiful that me focusing on the networking part of it has always come in handy at every point, like every growth point of my life. And that's how that came in. But now I'm here at Google as a contractor, and, there's one day I decided, I'm gonna work from home. I'm gonna work from home. I'll be okay. And that day, one of my homies on social media, he's an actually. He was also at Google as a contractor, and he was like, "Yo, bro, you ready to see George Lopez today?" And I was like, "Wait, what are you talking about?" He's like, "Yeah, he's coming to speak at Google." I was like, "No way!" I was like, "I'm out of here." So I jammed. I went to the garage. I grabbed a bunch of air fresheners, put them in like a little envelope, put them together, with like my business card and everything, put it in an envelope. And then I just drove all the way to Mountain View just so I could go watch George Lopez speak. So I ran it. I got there early. As a contractor, you're actually not even like allowed to go to these things. Mm-hmm. But like, I just walked in behind like a crowd of people, just bam, 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 sat in the second row as far up as I could. And I was like, my goal here is at the end of this, I'm just going to walk up to George Lopez and give him like, I knew he liked Cantinflas because obviously he's a comedian. Of course, he's going to respect those that came before him. So I had that one ready out, and I was laughing my ass off. I was a huge fan. So of course, like I know all his jokes. I love his work. So, at the end of it, I got a picture with him. I gave him give him the Cantinflas thing. He's like, "This is dope. Let's make something together." And I was like, that was it. That's all I wanted. It was like an acknowledgement that he knows I exist now. He's got all these fresheners. He said, "I want to make something with you." Cool. I thought it was gonna be like, oh yeah, next month we'll have something. It took like 6 months to even get like some sort of like meeting, because I had to talk to his people now. Now I'm talking to his people and I'm trying to get a hold of him. I was like, man, it was just easier when I was just able to DM him. So I kept trying to just DM him and like hit him up on Twitter. And I had a few different strategies to get a hold of people. Twitter was a lot better at one point, and then it was just DMing, and then now Instagram DMs is like really hard. But it was everything that I wanted.
Did anything ever come of the George Lopez piece?
Yeah. So eventually, I was like, man, this is lagging. I was disheartened. I was like, man, we had our moment. Things were rolling until like people got involved, and now I have to talk to the people that talk to him, and I can't sell my story. Like how do I get this going? And I was just like, you know what? I'll try another tactic. Like I just designed what I wanted to design because I asked him like, what would you like me to do? Or I was like, let's just talk over the phone one time, and that's all I need, and so I can just get your vision. And he was like, oh yeah, actually I have this cool design of my face. Can you make that into a freshener? I was like, that's not what I don't just produce I don't just produce fresheners. Like the point is that I can use my art with some input from you to design a freshener, not so I can take whatever art you have and make a freshener. Like I don't like. No, that's to be honest, I don't even like the art that he gave. I was like, oh, this is not quality that I want to put my name on. So I was like, whatever. It didn't work out for so many, and the next strategy I tried was just design the air freshener, post it on Instagram and tag him and say, what do you think, George? Like, should we make this or what? And I'd said, hey, everyone tag George Lopez in the comments. And from that post, he said, he sent me he commented, let's do it. And then he DM'd me and said, okay, what do we need to do? So I was like, thank you, man. That's all I needed.
So which one was the George Lopez one?
I designed his face. Okay. I designed his face, and I did a little like one of it. I just wanted to make sure that he was happy. One with the picture that I chose to reference, for the face. But I designed his face. I think we made probably like 500 or something like that. And he was like, I don't want anything from it. And I'm like, cool, thank you. Right. Like, he wasn't even like, make sure to send me my check or whatever. Yeah, I sent him a bunch, and he has them. And he even invited me to go one of his comedy shows and sell them at the exit.
Oh, nice.
Of his thing. So yeah, so it was dope.
And you did that?
Yeah, that one I was out of town, so I couldn't go to that show. I felt so bad, but I was like, but let me just send you. I know you have a merch table because he has a merch table at all his shows. Let me just send you a bunch, and you can have them there at your table. I don't even need the money from that. Like, right. I just want them to be at that table for your fans. Nice. So I did we just did a reciprocation of things, and at the end of it, I got that I got
You got that story.
I got the story. I
You
got to
got
do
that
it fresh with
story,
the
man.
Lopez. It's been so long since I actually talked about that one. I forgot about like the little nuances of how that worked out,
That's awesome.
But yeah.
So another question about Fuchila. Has anybody tried to knock you off?
Oh, from the beginning. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, not from the very beginning, which is cool because that means that I was doing something that was one, I was doing something dope and different. I knew there was no one else that I was doing Latino themed fresheners, car fresheners. And probably a year, almost 2 years into, I started to see things pop up, where like the legitimate design that I had designed was being used like on shirts or on stickers or something on
Wow.
some
So
other
just straight ripped
website.
you off.
Yeah, just straight ripped me off. In other cases was like basically, their version of what I did,
Hmm.
and which I guess is fine. I mean, that's what artists do. We all do versions of what someone else did
Yeah.
at
Good
some
artist
point.
copy, great artist
Yeah,
steal.
that's exactly the quote that I told my friend the other day. I was like, he was like, nothing's original anymore.
That's
I was
right.
like, Disney copies all kinds of people's stuff. And I'm like, well, like I said, great artists steal. So,
Yeah.
but like many times it was cool because actually the Fuchila community would TM me these things. They're like, hey,
Right.
I just found I found some of our fresheners up on eBay, like going for like, 15-20 bucks or something like that. Like stuff like that, just like, but I learned a lot. Besides that, I learned a lot of big lessons from Fuchila. One that I could actually, I thought that I was just an idea guy. Like I got ideas, but can I like I had
Execute.
never people felt, or at least the inner monologue in my head, and possibly because I felt like in college there was things that like I would procrastinate on or let things slip and just kind of like I was like, man, can I even like follow through like on something, and like I felt like it was part of my maturity process to like have an idea like Fuchila, start it completely from scratch, and then build it into like a business. And that confirmed that yes, I can execute, and I just have to trust my vision. And now I have a lot more. I listen to my gut a lot more because of Fuchila. I know that I can. I know that I could build a successful business. Before the pandemic, I had 5 people working for me, not full time, but we were doing stuff, and we were making like 150 a year, so it wasn't like I could,
Wow.
it was 60% of that was, or a little more, 65% was wholesale, which is why when the pandemic hit, we lost a lot of, unfortunate for a lot of our small businesses, closed their doors.
Yeah.
Obviously, weren't taking orders for Fuchila anymore. The other 30% was online, and art and community shows were a big cash influx.
Mhm.
And so those were gone. No more vendor shows, no more car shows, no more anything to sell Fuchila at for that cash. And then online, during a pandemic, not many folks are considering, the
Not
first way
many
to
folks are getting
spend their money is fresheners, you know what I
well,
mean? So
and they're not getting in their car.
yeah, and they're
They're
not even
staying at
going anywhere.
home. So they
Yeah, so
need
it
car
was
accessories.
yeah, it was not the pandemic. And as the pandemic was actually uh we were as the pandemic was kind of unrolling, or unveiling stuff here in the US. It was also a time where we got served with our first lawsuit at for Fuchila. So we that was like a big moment for us where I was like, hey, I made it. You know what I mean? Like I'm getting
Yeah.
sued. Like this is
So
that's the
and
American dream.
what was it? Copyright infringement
Yeah, it was the image and likeness
for
for Selena.
Selena. Yep,
Yeah,
that's what I
yeah,
was thinking.
for Abraham Quintanilla was suing Fuchila. for image and likeness.
And so what was it? Was it just a
Yeah.
cease and desist?
No, it was an
He wanted to check. He wanted to
actual
check.
lawsuit. Yeah. What was that?
He wanted to check.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know what he wanted. I think he has a team. I think
He probably has a team that just goes
he
around and
oh
just sends out
yeah.
the letters
He
all the
definitely
time.
he has a team that does that, and I think they gotta make themselves useful. So they can't just be cease and desisting. They gotta be billing those hours. So I think
So what'd you
they
have to do? Just send him how much, show him your
yeah,
books, and
it was
she's
it was the whole discovery, the whole discovery phase of it all. At first it was just like we were served at the end of at on Thanksgiving, the day after Thanksgiving on 2019, and then we didn't settle until Christmas of 2020.
right.
So
And as far as that's concerned, it just ends up in you writing him a check, right?
yeah, exactly. At the end of the day, just me writing a check. But
And a
in
check to
that
your
year,
lawyers.
yeah, in the year, we spent more on the lawyer. I spent more on the lawyers than I did on the settlement.
Yeah.
So it was it was quite a journey, and just quite a way to be like, yeah, this is a reality of what I'm doing, I guess, to some degree, and actually, for what it's worth, I think I learned a valuable lesson. And although it would have been cool to learn it
Without all
with a
that.
smaller price tag, but I think it was all meant to be. So I always believe that. So it was just so at the moment that Fuchila needed the most cash, I had no cash. The pandemic hit, we lost it all. As far as the revenue stream was going, the first couple months of paying my lawyers was
Painful.
like cool. Like I survived it. I made it work. Okay, now what? Like how much longer do we have to do this? And I didn't understand that like this was probably gonna take the time that it took. I thought it was gonna be done in a couple months, but it took a whole year to just even get them to make their offer, or tell me like, what do you want? Like all I want to know is what you want. I was like, I don't know if you I'm not who you think I am. And I could tell you, I could show you my books right now. Like this is what I made off the Selena
this one, right?
Like I'll pay you this and then a little bit more even if you want. But it's not. I was like, we don't have to do this, and it didn't matter.
Yeah,
it didn't matter. So, like I said, I learned that lesson. It kind of put a obviously a damper on the momentum that Fuchila had, but I feel like so did the pandemic. So it's not like
And so is Fuchila still going? I mean,
currently Fuchila is going. It's back to me again, just a sole operator. Just making. I'm just kind of, but I know that it's doesn't give me the energy it used to.
Right.
And so like similar to the things we were talking about earlier, like, I have that a blessing that I can just quit this. It's just a side hustle.
Well, and it changes from the creative, hey, who do I want to draw, or how should I interpret this drawing, to okay, now I've got inventory issues, and now I've got shipping issues, and now I've got tax issues, and now I've got lawyer issues, and now I've got legal copyright issues, and so many young entrepreneurs, or even I think young entrepreneurs find that out really fast. But before you actually start, you think, oh, well, I'm just going to be an entrepreneur, and I'm going to go on Shark Tank, and I'm going to be a billionaire. me and Mark Cuban and Damon John are going to kick it, and it's and the folks just don't understand that. The term I use now is that entrepreneurship isn't all it's cracked up to be. Like the folks that are legit entrepreneurs is because they can't live another way. That's
Yeah.
that energizes them. But
Mm-hmm.
I think and I work with a lot of creatives and a lot of artists, and oftentimes and even dentists, all of these
Yeah.
folks are set up to become entrepreneurs and start their own practices, and they don't like I in through my marketing, I've worked with a lot of dentists, and they
Mhm.
weren't trying to become small business owners. They
Yeah.
were wanted to become dentists,
I
and
just
then
wanted to be a dentist.
I just wanted to be a
Yeah.
dentist, but then they understood, hey, the way that you make your money is you start your own practice. It's like, yeah, and then you get your own lawyers, and you do all
Mm-hmm.
your own marketing, and you and you
Yeah.
do all your own
Everything.
like everything. And they were but they didn't teach them that in dental school.
No.
The same way, so my wife has a degree in studio art.
Oh, nice.
She's a ceramic artist,
I love
and
ceramics.
so many of her contemporaries go and get master's degrees. They get their MFA, and then they're
Mm-hmm.
out there, and there's kind of one or two routes for artists. A lot of times, it's you're either going to go be an entrepreneur, or you're going to go teach.
For teaching, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, through so many of these folks have 6-year degrees, which I mean they're experts in their field, and
Mm-hmm.
never once through all the 6 years of education did they have to take a business class.
Yeah.
And so
That's
they
great. Yeah.
graduate, and then it's like, okay, I'm an entrepreneur. It's like, all right, here's how. And so that's when I run into them, and it's like, all right, well, here's how you do marketing. And they're like, oh no, that's called selling out. I'm like,
Yeah.
no, that's called paying your mortgage.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. No, that's how you survive.
I actually do a presentation called the art of self promotion, how to sell out without selling out.
Yeah, I love
Right?
that. That's sick.
Because what's the winning goal when you have a big art opening? Hey, we sold out.
Hell yeah.
But as an
Exactly.
artist, the last thing you want to do is sell out, right?
Exactly. I
so
love that. That's
so
beautiful.
yeah, so that's cool. So you think well, I'll say it sounds like Fuchila maybe or maybe not has a grand future.
Yeah, I mean, I think at one point I considered like, okay, we're back. We're to all intents and purposes, we're back at square one with Fuchila. Do I
So much
have
more knowledge.
Yeah, I was like, do I have the now I know a lot more, but do I have the energy? Does it give me the energy, and do I have the energy to bring it back to what it was? Is one question. Another question I have is, do I even want to? Like, did Fuchila serve its purpose? Did Fuchila as it stands, 6 years later, did it serve its purpose? And by purpose, I mean, like, did I learn all the lessons I needed to learn? Did I make the network that I needed to make? Did it open the doors I needed it to? Right. And then another question is like, a creative friend of ours asked, like, would you ever sell it? And I'm like, I might consider that. And I went down that little rabbit hole for a little bit. And I realized, I didn't want to part ways with the community and that I built on social media. And I knew that that'd have to go with whoever
Right.
I sold the company to.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that was my community. I want to keep in contact with them. I want to tell them what I'm doing next or whatever. Like I don't want to give that up. They're the Fuchila Familia. So I scratched that off the list. Okay, I won't sell it. So then what can I do? And with the things that I've been playing around with now, the latest idea is basically just like fresheners for good. So, work doing only limited edition collaborations with other artists, and then pairing up with a community organization and then having proceeds go to that community org for whatever that they need. So that's kind of what I've been considering, especially because then I don't need to hold inventory long term. It's just like, like limited edition, sell out, it's gone.
And you can, at that point, you can do pre-sales.
Yeah, exactly. So, and I love that structure a lot more than wholesale. I learned so much from wholesale that like it was just impossible, at least with what I was using and what I was doing, our strategies, to like predict, how much I needed at what point and how much of which designs. And it was a mess trying to, at some points I was running really low. I was missing a bunch of designs, and other points I was like way over on designs that I needed. And every now and then I would get it right, and I would feel so proud of myself, and like, but it was just not the wholesale is just not the route anymore. And it needs a team, and which we had at one point, but not anymore. So what can I do on my own? I can, um, post on social media, and I could fulfill orders every once in a while, so that I can, do some good in the community. So that's kind of what I'm considering.
Man, I feel like that was such a blessing. Just the education. Whether you hopefully you made a decent chunk of money, but even if it cost you
Mm-hmm.
something, even if you just broke even, like the amount of education that you got
Mm-hmm.
was worth mountains more than a Stanford MBA.
Oh
Right?
yeah.
I mean, like I've gone into a couple business deals where, oh, this cost me, I ended up losing, $6,000, $8,000, $10,000.
Yeah.
But the amount of education that I got through the process is like, dude, that wasn't even one quarter of an MBA class. I couldn't
Yeah.
even have paid for one quarter of an MBA class, and I got 4 years of real world hands-on experience for a
So
fraction
true.
of the price, man.
Yeah.
And where I hear you talking about all the stuff that you learned from Fuchila, um, it's so exciting to think about. Hey, here's what I don't want to do. Right?
Mm-hmm.
I was at IBM for 3 years coding, only to learn that I did not want to be a coder. Right? I got
Yeah.
graduated with a computer engineering degree, and I worked at IBM for 3 years. And the first thing I did is I went into sales.
Yeah. You're
Because I
like,
learned.
not coding, please.
Yeah, and now for the past decade I've been teaching, and I teach coding, I sell coding, I said, but
Yeah.
but that I definitely knew it took a lot to learn what you didn't want to do, and so now going forward, whatever that next venture is, it's like, well, I want to be the creative. Maybe I'll start a design agency. It's like, oh
Mm-hmm.
wait, I don't want to design your BS product or your.
Yeah.
I don't want to like I don't want to spend all of my creative energy working on your nonsense.
Mm-hmm.
I want to work on my stuff. I want to be creative and work
Yeah.
on my stuff, and I want to outsource everything else.
Yeah. I
Uh,
feel you.
because I have the ability at the drop of a dime. If I ever wanted to start a full blown agency and be a creative director, I could do that. But then I sit around thinking about your nonsense product, and that's
Yeah.
and then what are the when I could do that at a corporate job and have insurance and get paid really, really well
Yeah,
at
exactly,
the
right?
same time. And so all of these, oftentimes the grass looks greener,
Yeah,
but
I
but
feel
it
you.
rarely is. And so those lessons are just invaluable.
Thank you, man. That's beautiful.
Yeah. I got just I've gone way over, but since it didn't seem like we've been on for 2 hours, but we I've been having a blast hearing these stories. I got just a couple closing questions, just kind of some rapid fire fun stuff.
Yeah.
Um, let's talk about 5 favorite artists.
My favorite artist. Damn, there's in any genre, like in
Sure,
anything.
sure.
Um, I don't feel ashamed to say this anymore. Kanye.
Okay, there you go.
Just in terms of his fight to just create in any space in any which way. Although in my mind, he went through some rough patches and still kind of working through those. I think as a creative, he's just one of those guys that I just have to like look up to. Um, I think another one would be Jorge Gutierrez. So he's the animator and director behind Book of Life and Maya and the
Mm,
Three on Netflix.
okay.
Yeah, his style of art and just his like if you listen to his story of Super Macho,
Mhm.
is a really good story. Um, other five, so many. Trying to think of other ones. His name is Gustavo. He's out of San Diego. I think he moved out to. He's on Instagram. His name is Gustavo. I forget his last name. But his painting technique is just unmatched. I don't think there's anyone, at least that I've seen, is just unmatched in terms of his technique. His technique. And I'm a big fan of a bro actually, Ricardo Cortez,
Oh, okay.
and he just has another mind where like he's technical like any other technical dude, but he also has the creative side. So when he blends those two together, specifically in the car culture world, like he takes all his creative genius, and he takes like his technical side to like bring everything together around car culture, which I love. So and who else? That's what I could think of right now.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. All right.
Yeah.
How about five dinner guests, dead or alive?
5 dinner guests.
Dead or alive? You plus five.
Dead or alive.
Dead or alive? Dead or alive? Who would you want to have dinner with?
I don't know. I guess for some reason Pancho Villa would be one. I just want to see if he's like who they say he was or so. Like I don't know. Just like out of
curiosity.
Out of curiosity. There. Damn, I don't know if I've ever been prepped with these kind of questions before.
Good. I'm glad I caught you off guard.
Yeah, I definitely should brush up on these. I think I'd want to have dinner with my mom's mom, my grandma.
There you go.
It'd be cool to see her again, and my dad's mom.
There you go.
Both my grandmas. Trying to look at pictures here. I actually really enjoy and I'm inspired by Pedro Arrupe. So he's a Jesuit.
Okay.
And he made the quote. He created some quotes about falling in love and about falling deeply in love with what you do, and then having that make your decisions for you. So I think I have that quote up here. So it kind of reminded me. I'd love to chat with him. Father Greg Boyle too. I don't know why.
Go.
Yeah.
Wow.
From
I know.
Yeah. So I just finished his or I'm on the way to finish his latest book.
Yep. I got it. I got it on my Audible queue.
Yeah, it's so good. Everything he does. All his books. He just speaks of a different. It's like he's from another world, and it shouldn't feel that way.
So talk about a match made in heaven with regards to a collab between Fuchila and Homeboy Industries, man. That would be beautiful.
Yeah.
I've bought quite a bit of stuff from Homeboy where it's donation, right?
Yeah.
It's like, I spent $150 on a hoodie.
Exactly.
It's like this hoodie's not worth $150.
Yeah, exactly.
but it was the donation. So I mean, you that's great, man. God, I would love to see something between that.
Yeah, I think it's even. I have a post too of me trying to get a hold of him on Instagram a while back, maybe a couple years ago, where someone finally responded saying, "Hey, I work for him. Let me know what you need." So it's still there in my feed somewhere. So I'd have to go back. I don't know why I didn't. I follow through on that.
I actually sent a message to Homeboy Industries trying to become a volunteer out here. But I never heard anything back.
Okay, yeah. So I figured I'd have to go directly to someone working in the office there too. So we'll
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Is there anybody else? No,
that's good. That's good. That's good. Last question. Who should I have on the podcast? And with the catch that you got to help me get him.
That's easy. Ricardo Cortez for sure. You got to get him on the podcast. He was a senior when I was a freshman, so I think he graduated in 06 or 07.
Okay. I think we talked before, and you said Neeraj.
Oh, definitely Neeraj is another bro. He's my line, so him and his pops just opened a new restaurant.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, so
that place looks amazing.
I want to go eat there now. So hopefully at some point we'll be, maybe we'll do like a brotherhood dinner there. So I'm just try to get folks out to do that. Who else? I mentioned Sean. I think, did you start with Sean?
I actually did start with Sean. Yeah,
okay,
I already hit Sean up, and then John Marcoida, we're hopefully going to line up this week.
Yeah, definitely. Who else has a crazy interesting?
I think you told me maybe Bam Bam.
Yes, Bam Bam is he lives like down the street from me too. So I would highly recommend his. I mean, he also was involved in the national board, so it was at the same time that I was. So there's definitely a lot of stories there. I would say even also Jesse Rizzo. I don't know if you ever got
Okay,
to meet
yeah,
him. Yeah, yeah. So I would
yeah,
say Jesse would be a cool brother to talk to. I think he has a lot of wisdom to share as a brother that was in the closet during our time, and just I'm sure there's so much wisdom and knowledge and just growth from in being there in that
nice.
space there. Who else? Those are the guys that
Oh,
come
that's
to mind
good.
right off the
That's
bat.
a good. That's a
Yeah,
good set, man. I'm so excited. I had such a blast talking to you today. I had such a blast talking to Sean Herrera last week,
yeah,
and I'm like, oh my God, this is great. This kind of shit just
yeah,
feeds my soul.
yeah.
So when you
Did he
talk
tell you
about
about his bands? Did he tell you about all his bands back in the day or no?
about his music bands,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
his
yeah, yeah,
music
yeah,
band.
yeah.
Okay,
We
good. I'm
talked about
glad.
music. We
Yeah,
talked
good.
about music. But it's just it's so good to connect. It's so good to get to know you more, and I just hope that we can continue to stay in touch and line something up, man. I mean, there's so many entrepreneurs, there's so many folks that we have so much resource just within our small community and within the larger community,
Seriously.
that there's no reason that we shouldn't be executing on the opportunity that we have in front of us.
Oh yeah.
Sean and I were talking about one piece about how all of these others Greek orgs where they just they make a phone call and all kinds of shit happens,
Yeah.
and there's no reason that we can't do that same thing with the resources that we now have as a super young org. That wasn't even
Yeah.
possible. It was like, hey, we're all in the same boat. But
Yeah.
now having the knowledge that we have, where we've got bros in their 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, and having all that knowledge that can help not just like undergrads, but can help us, man. Talking to
Yeah.
you, it's such a blast, and it energizes me. So I appreciate you. I thank you for your time. I thank you for letting us go over by an hour, and
Yeah.
uh
Not a
and
problem, man.
I wish I wish you and your fam the best in the new year, and we'll keep in touch.
Thank you very much, Omar. It was definitely a pleasure and a blessing. And man, you're right. It does get me energized. So thank you for that.
Absolutely, brother. We'll be in touch. Thanks, man.
All right. Adios.
Peace, bro.
Until next time, bros. That's my story and I'm sticking to it.